Clara's hands trembled as she lifted the last piece of bread from her shelf. 4 years alone. 4 winters of silence. Tonight she would give her final meal to strangers she pulled from a blizzard, a man with haunted eyes, and a little girl who called out for her mama. She didn't know his name. She didn't know he owned half the valley. She only knew that when the child wrapped frozen fingers around hers and whispered, "Please don't let us die," something long buried in Clara's chest cracked open. Before we continue this incredible journey, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's story to the very end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The winter of 1875 came early to the Colorado mountains. Clara Jane Thornton stood at her cabin window watching the sky turn the color of old bruises. 3 days ago, the clouds had rolled in from the north. 2 days ago, the temperature dropped so fast the creek froze mid-flow. Yesterday, the first snow fell. Today, the world disappeared. She pressed her palm against the cold glass. Her reflection stared back hollow cheeks, tired eyes, hair she hadn't bothered to pin up properly in weeks. "Don't matter," she whispered to no one. "Ain't nobody coming to see." The cabin was small. 1 room, 1 hearth, 1 bed pushed against the wall. A rifle hung above the door. A Bible sat on the table unopened since the day she buried her son. 4 years. 4 years since Thomas and Samuel went into the ground side by side wrapped in the quilts she'd sewn for their wedding and their baby's birth. Clara turned from the window and checked her supplies. Half a sack of flour. A quarter wheel of cheese going hard at the edges. Some dried venison. 3 potatoes sprouting eyes in the corner. It would last another week. Maybe 2 if she stretched. She'd survived worse. The wind picked up around noon, howling through the gaps in the walls she'd never quite sealed right. Clara stuffed rags in the cracks and fed the fire, watching flames eat through wood she'd chopped herself. Thomas would have fixed those gaps, she said aloud, then caught herself. She'd stopped talking to the dead 2 years ago, mostly. By evening, the blizzard screamed. Clara couldn't see past the porch. Snow drove sideways, thick as curtains, white as bone. She barred the door and checked her rifle and told herself the sounds she heard were wind, just wind, nothing but a child's scream cut through the storm. Clara's blood went cold. She grabbed the rifle and threw open the door. Snow slammed into her face, blinding her. She squinted into the white nothing, heart pounding. Hello, nothing, wind, ice, then there. Movement in the trees. A shape stumbling through snow that reached past its waist. Small. Too small. Clara didn't think. She ran. The snow swallowed her up to her thighs. Each step was a battle. Her lungs burned with cold, her fingers already numb around the rifle stock. "Hold on," she shouted. "I'm coming." The shape fell. Clara pushed harder. 20 feet. 10. 5. A little girl lay face down in the snow, her coat too thin, her hair dark and matted with ice. She wasn't moving. Clara dropped to her knees and turned her over. The child's lips were blue. Her eyes fluttered open, brown, huge, terrified. "Mama," the girl whispered. Clara's chest seized. For one terrible moment, she saw Samuel's face. Samuel at 3, calling for her from his bed. Samuel at 5, burning with fever. Samuel at the end, too weak to call for anyone. "I ain't your mama," Clara said roughly. "But I'm gonna get you inside. Where's your Lily?" A man's voice ragged with panic. Clara looked up. He came through the storm like something half wild, tall, broad-shouldered snow in his dark hair and desperation in his eyes. He carried no weapon. His hands reached for the child. "She ran," he gasped. "Saw a light, ran before I could stop her." "Inside," Clara said. "Now. Both of you." The man scooped up the girl without hesitation. Clara led them back through the snow, each step harder than the last. The wind screamed. The cold bit. By the time they reached the porch, Clara couldn't feel her feet. She shoved open the door and they tumbled inside. The warmth hit like a wall. Clara slammed the door shut and barred it, then turned to look at the strangers she'd just invited into her home. The man knelt on her floor, clutching the child against his chest. His whole body shook cold, or fear, or both. His coat was fine wool soaked through and ruined. His boots were quality leather, the kind that cost more than Clara's cabin. Rich. He was rich. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" Clara demanded. The man looked up. His eyes were gray, the color of winter sky, and they held a grief Clara recognized in her own mirror. "Got lost," he said. "Horses spooked in the storm. Ran off. We've been walking for hours." In this, Clara gestured at the howling world outside. "With a child. You trying to kill her?" Something flickered in his face. Pain. Shame. "We were visiting." He stopped. Swallowed. "My wife's grave. Up on Miller's Ridge." Clara's anger died in her throat. She knew that ridge. Knew the small cemetery there where pioneers buried their dead in ground so hard it took 3 men to dig a grave. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. The man shook his head. "Don't. I don't need—" He broke off, looking down at the child in his arms. "She needs warmth. Please." Clara moved without thinking. She pulled the quilt from her bed, the one she'd saved, the one that still smelled like home before the fever, and wrapped it around the girl. "Get her closer to the fire. I'll heat some broth." The man carried his daughter to the hearth. He moved stiffly, like a man who'd pushed past his limits and was running on nothing but will. Clara hung a pot over the flames and added the last of her venison broth. It wasn't much. It wouldn't fill 2 bellies, let alone 3. She'd manage. She always did. "Lily." The man's voice was soft. "Lily, honey, can you hear me?" The child stirred. Her eyes opened again, focusing on her father's face. "Papa." "I'm here." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm right here. You're safe now." "Cold, Papa." "I know, sweetheart, I know. This nice lady's gonna help us warm up okay." Lily's gaze drifted to Clara. Her small face was pale as milk, but her eyes held a spark of curiosity. "Are you an angel?" Clara almost laughed. Almost. "No, child. Just a woman with a fire and not much sense. You saved us." "Wasn't about to let you freeze on my doorstep." The man looked up at her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled. Wind battered the walls. "Thank you," he said finally. "I don't—" His voice cracked. "I don't know how to—" "Don't need thanks." Clara turned back to the broth. "Need you to get those wet clothes off before you catch your death. There's a blanket in the chest by the bed." He hesitated. "I ain't gonna look," Clara said dryly. "And if I did, I've seen worse than whatever you're hiding under that fancy coat." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. It made him look younger, less haunted. He did as she asked. Clara kept her back turned, listening to the rustle of wet fabric, the creak of the chest opening. When she glanced back, he'd wrapped himself in her spare blanket, his ruined clothes steaming by the fire. "The broth's thin," she warned, ladling it into wooden bowls. "But it's hot." She gave the biggest portion to Lily, who took it with both hands, blowing on the steam. "What do you say, sweetheart?" the man prompted. "Thank you, ma'am." "Clara," she said before she could stop herself. "Name's Clara." The man accepted his bowl with a nod. "Nathaniel. Nate. And this is Lily." Clara sat across from them, her own bowl, mostly broth, with a few scraps of meat she'd been saving. She ate slowly, trying not to calculate how many days she'd just cut from her supplies. Didn't matter. They'd have died out there. Some things were worth going hungry for. Lily finished first, and her father. Her eyes drooped, exhaustion pulling her under. "She can take the bed," Clara said. "I'll sleep by the fire." "We can't." "Wasn't asking." Nate looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're giving us everything you have." "I'm giving you shelter from a storm. Ain't the same thing." "That broth was the last of your meat." Clara's jaw tightened. "You always this observant, or just when you're freezing to death?" "Sorry." He shook his head. "I notice things. Habit." "Bad habit. Makes folks uncomfortable. He almost smiled again. So I've been told. Lily had curled into a ball on the floor, too tired to stay awake. Nate gathered her gently and carried her to the bed. He tucked the quilts around her, with hands that were still shaking, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Clara watched, heart aching in ways she'd thought she'd numbed. Thomas used to do that with Samuel. Every night without fail. Even when he was exhausted from working the fields. Even when the fever had him half delirious himself, she looked away. She's been through a lot, Nate said quietly, returning to the fire. Her mother... He stopped. You don't have to tell me. I know. He sat down heavily. But you saved our lives. Seems like you deserve to know who you saved. Clara poured the last of the broth into his bowl. Drink that. You're still shaking. He obeyed. The firelight carved shadows into his face, showing lines of grief and weariness. Margaret died 2 years ago, he said finally. Giving birth. The baby a boy, he didn't make it either. Clara's hands stilled on her empty bowl. I was in Denver. Nate continued, his voice flat. Selling cattle. By the time I got word, by the time I rode back. He shook his head. They were already in the ground. Wasn't your fault. I should have been there. You couldn't have known. I should have been there. His eyes met hers, and Clara saw it, the guilt that ate at him, the weight that would never fully lift. A husband's place is with his wife. A father's place is with his family. I was off making money we didn't need while my wife... He stopped. His jaw worked. Clara knew that silence. She'd lived in it for 4 years. I lost my husband and son, she said quietly. Typhoid. Took them both in the same week. Nate looked at her. I nursed them day and night, Clara continued. Did everything the doctor said, did everything right. They died anyway. That wasn't your fault. She met his gaze steadily. Neither was yours. But you'll carry it anyway. We all do. The fire popped. Somewhere outside, a tree branch cracked under the weight of snow. How do you live with it? Nate asked. Clara thought about it, really thought. You don't, she said finally. Not the way you were before. That person's gone. You just become someone else. Someone who keeps going. Is that enough? Some days. She wrapped her arms around herself. Some days, it's all there is. They sat in silence for a long while. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, something had shifted. 2 strangers bound by grief warming themselves at the same fire. I should pay you, Nate said eventually. For the food, the shelter. I don't want your money. Please, let me... I said no. Clara's voice sharpened. I didn't drag you out of that snow for payment. I did it because it was right. Because... She stopped. Because... She looked at Lily sleeping peacefully in her bed. Because that child called out for her mama, and I couldn't just... Her voice broke. She hadn't cried in 3 years. She'd thought she'd run dry. But something about this night, the storm, the child, the man with grief, gray eyes cracked through her walls. I'm sorry. She stood abruptly, turning away. I don't usually... Clara. His hand touched her elbow, gentle, careful. You don't have to apologize, he said softly. Not to me. She took a shaky breath, then another. When she turned back, his eyes held no pity, only understanding. One night, she said, her voice steadier. Storm should break by morning, then you head back to wherever you came from. Nate nodded slowly. One night. He didn't push, didn't argue, just accepted her terms with quiet grace. Clara wrapped herself in her thin blanket and settled near the fire. She wouldn't sleep. She never slept with strangers in her home. But she could rest, keep watch, make sure they were safe. That was what she told herself anyway, But as the hours passed, as the fire burned low, she found her eyes drifting to the man who sat against the wall, his gaze fixed on his daughter. He hadn't slept either. Every few minutes he'd check on Lily, adjust her blankets, brush hair from her face. A good father. It ached to watch. "You should rest," Clara said quietly. "Can't." Nate's voice was rough. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her running into that storm. She's safe now. Because of you." He looked at her. "I've met a lot of people, Clara. Rich people, powerful people. None of them would have done what you did tonight." "Then you've been meeting the wrong people. Maybe." He paused. "Or maybe you're just..." "Just what?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Sorry. I'm tired. Saying things I shouldn't." Clara wanted to ask. The questions sat on her tongue, demanding answers she wasn't sure she wanted. She swallowed it. "Get some sleep," she said instead. "I'll keep watch." "You've been watching all night. You must be exhausted." "I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it right." She almost smiled. "Since when does right factor into survival?" Nate's expression softened. "Is that all this is to you? Survival?" Clara thought of her cabin, her solitary days, her long silent nights. "It's all I've got left," she said. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Nate nodded slowly. Then, without another word, he closed his eyes and let exhaustion take him. Clara watched the fire burn down to embers. She watched the snow pile against the window. She watched the man and child sleeping peacefully in her home, filling spaces that had been empty for 4 years. Something stirred in her chest. Something dangerous. Hope. She crushed it immediately. Hope was for fools. Hope was what got you hurt. These strangers would leave in the morning. Her life would return to its familiar solitude. And this night would become nothing but a memory, a strange dream of connection in the depths of winter. That was what she told herself. But as dawnlight crept through the frosted window, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Reluctance. She didn't want them to go, and that terrified her more than any storm. Morning came gray and cold. Clara woke to find Nate already up feeding her fire with wood from the pile she'd stacked by the door. "You didn't have to do that," she said, pushing herself upright. He glanced back. "Couldn't sleep anyway. Figured I'd make myself useful." Lily still slumbered in the bed, her face peaceful. Clara wondered what dreams she was having. Happy ones, she hoped. Children deserved happy dreams. "Storm's still going," Nate said. Clara moved to the window. He was right. Snow continued to fall, lighter than yesterday, but steady. The world remained a blur of white. "Could last another day," she admitted. "Maybe 2. Nate's jaw tightened. "We've already taken too much." "You've taken what I offered." Clara turned to face him. "Don't insult me by acting like I can't afford my own charity." "Can you?" The question was blunt, honest. It demanded the same in return. Clara's silence was answer enough. "Let me help," Nate said. "I can hunt, fish, whatever you need, I'll earn our keep." "In this weather?" "I've hunted in worse." "That's foolish." "Maybe." He reached for his coat, still damp from yesterday. "But I won't sit here eating food I didn't help provide." Clara opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Pride. She knew that look. She'd worn it herself often enough. "There are traps near the creek," she said finally. "East side about half a mile. If anything's caught, I'll find them." He was already moving toward the door. "Nate." He paused, hand on the latch. "Be careful." Clara's voice was rough. "That child needs her father." Something flickered in his eyes. "That child needs more than I can give her." Before Clara could respond, he was gone, swallowed by the storm. She stared at the closed door for a long moment. Then she turned to find Lily awake and watching her. "He's coming back," the child said. Her voice was certain. Absolute. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. Of course he is. Mama didn't come back. Lily's dark eyes held knowledge too old for her years. She went to heaven and didn't come back. The words hit like a fist. Clara remembered Samuel at the end, how he'd asked for her to come back, how she'd promised she would, how she'd broken that promise every day since by surviving when he couldn't. Your papa's strong, Clara said. He'll come back. Promise? It was a child's question, simple, direct, demanding everything. Clara shouldn't promise. She knew that. Couldn't control the storm, couldn't control fate, couldn't guarantee anything in this hard world. But Lily's eyes were so bright, so hopeful. I promise, Clara heard herself say. Lily smiled the first real smile Clara had seen from her, and something in Clara's chest cracked open just a little wider. Are you a mama? Lily asked. Clara's breath caught. I was. Once. What happened? Clara's throat tightened. He went to heaven, like your mama. Lily considered this. Then she reached out and took Clara's hand with her small warm fingers. I'm sorry, she said solemnly. That's very sad. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only sit there holding a stranger's child's hand, feeling tears she'd thought dried up years ago burning behind her eyes. Do you miss him? Lily asked. Every day. Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense. I miss Mama every day too. Papa says that means we loved them real big. Your papa's right. He's right about most things. Lily paused, her head tilting. He's sad a lot though, like you. Clara blinked. Like me. You have the same eyes. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. The kind that look far away even when they're looking at you. Out of the mouths of babes, Clara thought. How old are you? She asked. 6 3/4. You're very smart for 6 3/4. Lily brightened. Mama always said that too. Her smile faltered. I try to remember everything she said, but sometimes I forget, and then I feel bad. Clara squeezed her hand. You won't forget the important parts, the love that stays. Promise. There was that word again, that impossible word. Promise, Clara said. They sat together in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the storm howling outside. Clara found herself telling Lily about Samuel, his laugh, his curiosity, the way he used to chase chickens around the yard until he collapsed in giggles. Lily listened with rapt attention, then shared stories about her mother, how she sang songs at bedtime, how she made the best apple pie, how she always smelled like lavender. Two strangers exchanging pieces of the people they'd lost. It hurt, but it also healed. By the time Nate returned half-frozen snow in his beard, 2 rabbits in his hands, Clara and Lily had moved past strangers into something else. Something neither could name. Told you he'd come back, Lily said triumphantly. Nate's eyes found Clara's. He didn't say anything, but his expression held gratitude so deep it made her uncomfortable. Foolish, she said, taking the rabbits. You could have died out there. Worth it. He shook snow from his coat. Can't take without giving. That's the code. Clara almost smiled. Whose code? Mine. He met her gaze. And my father's before me. A man earns his keep, or he ain't worth keeping. That's so. That's so. She looked at the rabbits in her hands. Good ones. Fat. Enough meat to last days if she stretched it right. Then I reckon you've earned another night, she said. Nate's smile was brief as summer lightning, but real. Reckon I have. That night they ate well. Clara made stew thick with meat and potatoes she'd been hoarding. They sat around the fire, passing bowls back and forth, and Lily told jokes she'd learned from the ranch hands back home. Why did the cow go to the theater? She asked, barely containing her giggles. I don't know, Nate said, playing along. Why? To see the movie! Clara laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised her, rusty from disuse, almost foreign. Lily beamed like she'd won a prize. Later, after the child had fallen asleep, Nate and Clara sat by the dying fire. The storm had gentled to a whisper. Tomorrow the sky might clear. She likes you, Nate said quietly. She's easy to like. Not always. He stared into the embers. After Margaret died, she stopped talking. For 3 months. Doctors said it was shock. I thought... He swallowed. I thought I'd lost her too. Clara's heart ached. But she came back. Slowly. She's still... He struggled for words. There are days she won't let me out of her sight. Days she wakes up screaming. I don't know how to... He broke off. I don't know how to be enough. You are enough. Am I? His eyes met hers, raw with doubt. I have money, land, 100 men working for me, but I can't give my daughter what she needs. What does she need? A mother. The word cracked. Someone to teach her the things I don't know. Braid her hair, answer her questions about growing up. He shook his head. I try, God knows I try, but I'm failing her. Clara thought of Lily's bright eyes, her easy trust, her laughter. That child is happy, she said firmly. Wounded, yes, still healing, but happy. You did that. She's happy now, with you. The words landed between them, heavy with meaning. Clara's breath caught. Nate, I'm not. He held up a hand. I'm not asking anything. I just... He exhaled. I notice things. How she looks at you. How she laughed at supper. She hasn't laughed like that since... He stopped. Clara waited. Since her mother died. He finished quietly. The fire popped. Outside, wind rustled through pines. I'm not her mother, Clara said. I know. I'm nobody. A widow in the woods with nothing to offer. You offered us everything. Nate's voice was fierce. Your food, your shelter, your bed. You didn't have to do any of it. Anyone would have... No. He leaned forward. They wouldn't. I've seen the world, Clara. People don't give like that. Not without expecting something back. What could I expect from strangers in a storm? Nothing. That's the point. His eyes burned into hers. You did it because it was right. Because you're... He stopped himself again. Because I'm what... He shook his head. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be out of your hair. Clara should have been relieved. She'd wanted them gone, hadn't she? Wanted her solitude back, her careful routines, her safe and empty life. But watching Nate settle near his daughter, one hand reaching out to touch her sleeping form, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Regret. She didn't want them to go, and she had no idea what to do about it. The storm broke on the 3rd morning. Clara woke to silence so complete it rang in her ears. No wind, no howling, just the soft crackle of dying embers and the steady breathing of 2 people who had become far too familiar in far too short a time. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling she'd memorized over 4 years of sleepless nights. Her chest felt heavy. Wrong. Today they would leave. She pushed herself up and moved to the window. The world outside gleamed white and gold under a pale winter sun. Beautiful, dangerous, passable. It stopped. Nate's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him wake. It stopped, she confirmed without turning around. Silence stretched between them. The kind of silence that held too many words. I should... He cleared his throat. I should find the horses. They'll have sheltered in the canyon south of here. I know the spot. Then we'll be gone by noon. His voice was carefully neutral. Out of your way. Clara finally turned. He stood by the cold hearth, already dressed in his now dry clothes. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those gray winter eyes, held something she couldn't name. Lily's still sleeping, she said. She needs rest. Yesterday took a lot out of her. Clara nodded. The child had been quieter yesterday, more clingy. She'd held Clara's hand for hours while Nate worked on patching the roof he'd noticed was weak. He'd noticed everything, this man. The loose floorboard she'd been meaning to fix. The door that stuck in its frame. The way her woodpile was running low. He'd fixed what he could in the time he had, without asking, without expecting thanks. Nate. He paused at the doorcoat, half-buttoned. Clara's throat closed around the words she wanted to say. Stay. Don't go. I don't want to be alone again. Be careful, she said instead. Snow's deep. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. I'll be back in a few hours. Then he was gone. Clara stood at the window and watched him disappear into the white distance. Her hands gripped the sill until her knuckles ached. He's coming back, right? She spun around. Lily stood in the doorway to the bedroom, bare feet on cold floor, eyes huge with worry. He's coming back, Clara said quickly. Just gone to find your horses. Oh. Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. Clara crossed to her and knelt down, taking the child's cold hands. Let's get you by the fire. Your feet are freezing. They sat together on the floor, wrapped in quilts, while Clara built up the flames. Lily leaned against her side like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't want to go, the child said quietly. Clara's hand stilled on the kindling. I like it here, Lily continued. It's small, but it feels... She struggled for the word. Safe. You have a home, sweetheart, a real home, with your papa. The big house is too big. Lily's voice dropped. Mama's things are still there. Her dresses, her hairbrush. Papa won't move them. She swallowed. Sometimes I forget she's gone, and then I remember, and it hurts all over again. Clara's chest constricted. That's... She had to stop. Breathe. That's how grief works, honey. It sneaks up on you. Does it ever stop? No. Clara pulled the child closer. But it gets quieter, over time, like a storm that moves into the distance. You can still hear it, but it doesn't shake your walls anymore. Lily considered this. How long does that take? Different for everyone. How long for you? Clara looked into the fire. Flames danced and flickered alive with light. I'm still waiting, she admitted. Lily's small hand found hers. Maybe you need someone to wait with. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. Simple, true, devastating. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Nate stood in the threshold, breathing hard snow in his hair. His face was tight with something Clara couldn't read. Found the horses, he said. Both of them. That's good. And something else. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Riders, about a mile out, heading this way. Clara's blood chilled. How many? 3, maybe 4. You recognize them? No. His jaw tightened. But they're moving fast, like they know where they're going. Clara was already on her feet, moving toward the rifle above the door. Could be trappers. Could be trouble. She met his eyes. You bring trouble with you, Nate. I don't. He stopped, ran a hand through his damp hair. Maybe. I don't know. There's been some problems. Back home. What kind of problems? The kind that comes with money. His voice was bitter. People who want what I have. People who think a widower with a young daughter is an easy target. Clara's grip tightened on the rifle. Who? There's a woman. Beatrice Aldridge. He said the name like it tasted foul. Her husband died last year. Left her comfortable but not rich. She's been persistent. Persistent how? Trying to convince the town I'm unfit to raise Lily alone. That a child needs a mother. That she'd be... He broke off, disgust in his face. That she'd be willing to take on the burden. She wants your money. She wants everything, and she's not above dirty tricks to get it. Lily had gone pale. I don't like Mrs. Aldridge. She smiles wrong. Clara looked at the child, then back at Nate. You think she sent these riders? I don't know, but the timing... He shook his head. We were supposed to be back 3 days ago. If she reported us missing, if she convinced the sheriff, I'd done something to Lily. A chill ran down Clara's spine. They'd be looking for you. And if they find me here with a woman they don't know? Nate's face was grim. It'll look bad, for both of us. Clara's mind raced. She knew how small towns worked, knew how gossip spread like wildfire, how reputations could be destroyed with a whisper. A wealthy widower, a mysterious disappearance, a strange woman in the woods. The story practically wrote itself. You need to hide, she said. What? There's a root cellar, under the floor by the hearth. She was already moving, pulling back the worn rug, revealing the trapdoor beneath. Get in, both of you. Clara, I can't let you. You can, and you will. She met his eyes fiercely. If those riders are looking for trouble, better they find a lonely widow than a man who matches whatever description they've been given. And if they hurt you, they won't. She hefted the rifle. This ain't my first time dealing with strangers. Nate hesitated. Every line of his body screamed resistance. Papa! Lily tugged at his coat. Miss Clara knows what she's doing. Something in his face broke. He looked at his daughter, then at Clara, and nodded once. If anything happens. It won't. But if it does, he gripped her arm. The ranch is called Harlan's Ridge, 2 days' ride southwest. Find it. Tell them what happened. Silas, my foreman, he'll know what to do. Nate, promise me. There was that word again. Promise. The word that bound and broke and held people together against all odds. I promise, Clara said. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he lifted Lily into his arms and climbed down into the darkness of the cellar. Clara handed him a lantern, a blanket. Stay quiet, she said. No matter what you hear. Clara. His voice rose from the shadows. Thank you. For everything. She closed the trapdoor before she could respond, replaced the rug, steadied her breathing. The rifle felt good in her hands. Familiar, heavy with purpose. She moved to the window and waited. They came 20 minutes later. 4 riders, just as Nate had said. They approached slowly, fanning out as they reached the cabin. One of them, the leader, Clara guessed, dismounted while the others hung back. He was a big man, thick through the shoulders. His face was weathered and hard, and he wore the badge of a deputy on his chest. Clara opened the door before he could knock. Afternoon, ma'am. He tipped his hat, but his eyes were already scanning the cabin behind her. Name's Deputy Silas Tucker. Looking for a man and a girl. Got reports they've gone missing. Clara kept her expression neutral. Missing, you say? That's right. Man named Nathaniel Harlan. Little girl about yay high. He held a hand at hip level. You seen them? Clara's heart pounded. She forced it steady. I've been snowed in for 3 days, Deputy. Haven't seen a soul. Tucker's eyes narrowed. Mind if we take a look around? I mind a great deal. Clara didn't move from the doorway. This is my property. I don't know you, and I don't appreciate strangers demanding entry into my home. Now, ma'am, you got a warrant. Tucker's jaw tightened. This is a rescue mission, not an investigation. Then you won't mind riding on and looking elsewhere. Clara's grip tightened on the rifle she kept just inside the door. I told you I haven't seen anyone. You calling me a liar? One of the other riders shifted. We should check the area, deputy. They could be... I heard the lady. Tucker held up a hand. She says she hasn't seen them. His eyes bored into Clara's. Strange woman living out here alone. Not many folks do that. Not many folks mind their own business either, Clara replied coolly. Yet here we are. Tucker's face reddened. For a moment Clara thought he might push past her anyway. His eyes dropped to the rifle visible at her side. If you see them, he said finally, you send word to town. There's a lady very concerned about that little girl. I'm sure there is. The bitterness in her voice made Tucker pause. Something you want to say, ma'am? Clara smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I think you've said plenty, deputy. Safe travels. She closed the door in his face. Through the window she watched them argue. Tucker gestured toward the cabin. Another rider shook his head. Finally they mounted up and rode east, disappearing into the tree line. Clara waited 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. Only when she was certain they were gone did she pull back the rug and open the trap door. Nate climbed out first, Lily clinging to his neck. His face was pale. You heard every word. He set Lily down gently. Beatrice, she actually did it. She's trying to take Lily from me. On what grounds? Whatever grounds she can manufacture. His hands clenched into fists. Unfit father. Suspicious disappearance. It doesn't matter if it's true. If she gets enough people talking, then we stop her. Nate looked at Clara sharply. We... The word had slipped out without thought. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. You saved our lives, she said stiffly. I don't abandon debts. This isn't your fight. Maybe I want it to be. The words hung between them. Lily looked back and forth, a smile tugging at her lips. So, you're coming with us? The child asked hopefully. Clara opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Nate. He wasn't smiling. His expression was serious, searching, asking a question he wouldn't put into words. You don't have to, he said quietly. I meant what I said. We'll be gone by noon. You can go back to your life. Clara looked around her cabin. The walls that had sheltered her, the silence that had protected her, the loneliness that had slowly, surely been killing her. My life, she repeated. Yes. She thought of Lily's small hand in hers, of Nate's gray eyes across the firelight, of laughter she'd forgotten she knew how to make. What if I don't want my life anymore? Nate's breath caught. Clara! I'm not saying... She held up a hand. I'm not promising anything, but those riders will be back. And when they don't find you on the trail, they'll start looking closer. At cabins, and at women who acted suspicious. Then come with us. Nate stepped closer. Just until this is settled. You can stay at the ranch. Silas will give you a job room and board. When it's over, I'll decide what comes next. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Lily squealed and threw her arms around Clara's legs. You're coming. You're really coming. Clara's hand moved to the child's hair before she could stop it. Soft, tangled from sleep. Warm. Reckon I am, she murmured. She had no idea what she was doing. No plan, no safety net, nothing but a rifle and a promise and two strangers who felt like something she'd lost long ago. It was probably the stupidest decision she'd ever made. It was also the first time in 4 years she'd felt alive. They rode out within the hour. Clara packed light. There wasn't much to pack. Her rifle, her mother's Bible, a change of clothes, the quilt she couldn't leave behind. Everything else she left. The cabin had been a hiding place, not a home. She'd known that for years, had just refused to admit it. Nate's horse was strong enough to carry double. Clara sat behind him, her arms around his waist, trying not to notice how warm he was, how solid. Lily rode the second horse like she'd been born in the saddle, which she probably had. 2 days to the ranch, Nate said. We'll avoid the main roads. They'll be watching for you. Let them watch. His voice hardened. I'm done running. They traveled through the afternoon, stopping only to water the horses. The snow was deep, but the sky stayed clear. By nightfall, they'd covered 15 miles. They made camp in a sheltered hollow building, a small fire that wouldn't be visible from the road. Lily fell asleep almost immediately, curled between them like a puppy. "You should rest," Nate said quietly. "So should you." "Can't, mine's too loud." Clara understood. She sat across from him, the fire between them, and waited. "Beatrice came to the ranch 6 months after Margaret died," he said finally. "Brought food, offered condolences, seemed kind enough. But she started positioning herself, suggesting Lily needed a woman's influence, hinting that I couldn't manage alone. At first I thought she was just being helpful. Then I realized she was building a case." "For what?" "For taking Lily." His voice was flat. "She's got money, connections. Half the town council owes her husband's estate favors. If she convinces them I'm unfit—" "You're not unfit. Doesn't matter what's true." He poked at the fire viciously. "Matters what people believe. And Beatrice is very good at making people believe what she wants." Clara thought of the deputy's suspicious eyes, the way he'd looked at her cabin like it was hiding secrets. "What's her angle?" she asked. "She can't just take your daughter. There are laws." "She wants to marry me." Nate's lip curled. "Get the land, the cattle, everything. If I won't agree, and I won't, she'll destroy me another way." "By taking Lily. By taking everything that matters." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. She thought of her own loss, her own powerlessness. The fever hadn't cared about her prayers or her nursing or her desperate screaming love. But this was different. This was a human enemy with human weakness. This could be fought. "Then we fight," she said. Nate looked up sharply. "I don't know how yet," Clara continued. "But I know one thing. That woman isn't getting this child. Not while I'm breathing." Something shifted in Nate's expression. Surprise, wonder, hope. "You barely know us." "I know enough." Clara met his eyes across the flames. "I know Lily lost her mother too young. I know you're trying your best in impossible circumstances. I know you fixed my roof without being asked and hunted in a blizzard to earn your keep." She took a breath. "I know what it is to lose everything and keep living anyway. And I know that anyone who'd hurt a child to get what they want doesn't deserve to win." Nate was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. An owl called somewhere in the darkness. "Why are you doing this?" he asked finally. "Really?" Clara looked at Lily sleeping peacefully between them. Looked at this man who'd stumbled into her life like a storm, leaving everything changed in his wake. "Because 4 years ago, I prayed for death," she said quietly. "Every night for a year, I begged God to take me too. He didn't. I thought that meant he'd abandoned me. But maybe—" She stopped, swallowed. "Maybe he was just waiting," she finished. "For me to be ready." "Ready for what?" Clara didn't answer. Couldn't. The words were too big, too terrifying, too much. But Nate nodded like he understood anyway. "Get some sleep," he said gently. "We've got a long ride tomorrow." Clara lay down beside Lily, pulling the child close. The little girl stirred, mumbled something, then burrowed deeper against her. Trust. This small person trusted her completely. Clara closed her eyes and for the first time in 4 years didn't dream of the dead. Morning came cold and bright. They broke camp quickly, eating dried meat and hard bread as they rode. Lily chattered about the ranch, the horses, the cattle, the foreman named Silas, who taught her to rope. "He's grumpy," she confided to Clara. "But he makes good biscuits." "That's a useful quality in a person." "That's what Papa says." Lily grinned. "You'll like him. He's loyal." "That's what matters most," Papa says. "Loyal and true." Clara glanced at Nate, who was scanning the tree line ahead. "Trouble?" she asked. "Not sure." He slowed his horse. Thought I saw movement. They stopped. Listened. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Clara. Nate's voice was low. Take Lily, right east. There's a settlement called Miller's Creek about... I'm not leaving you. If something happens to me, you need to get her to safety. Nothing's going to happen. Clara. I said no. She urged her horse forward until she was beside him. We face this together or not at all. Before he could argue, 3 riders emerged from the trees ahead. Not deputies this time. These men were harder, rougher, the kind of men who hired out their muscle for coin. The leader smiled with teeth gone brown from tobacco. Mr. Harlan, Mrs. Aldridge sends her regards. Nate's hand moved to his rifle. I don't want trouble. Then you shouldn't have made any. The man's eyes slid to Clara. Who's the woman new wife already? None of your concern. See, that's where you're wrong. The rider urged his horse closer. Everything about you is Mrs. Aldridge's concern. She's been real worried. Little girl missing in a blizzard. Father acting strange, taking off without telling anyone. Folk are starting to talk. Let them talk. They're doing more than that. The man's smile widened. Sheriff's real interested in having a conversation with you. About where you've been, who you've been with. His eyes raked over Clara again, making her skin crawl. I'm sure there's an innocent explanation, he continued. But a widow woman living alone young enough to catch a rich man's eye, well, people will think what they think. Clara's blood boiled. You got something to say it plain. The man laughed. Got fire, this one. I like that. Then you'll love this. Clara raised her rifle in one smooth motion. Ride away, now, or I'll put a bullet between your eyes and feed your corpse to the wolves. The man's smile froze. His companions shifted hands, moving to their weapons. The air crackled with tension. Easy now, the leader said slowly. No need for anyone to get hurt. Then leave. Can't do that, ma'am. Mrs. Aldridge is expecting... Clara fired. The bullet tore past his ear close enough to graze. The man's horse reared, nearly throwing him. He grabbed the saddle horn, face white with shock. That was a warning, Clara said calmly. Next one won't be. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then the leader laughed, high and sharp and genuinely surprised. Well, well. He steadied his horse, one hand pressed to his bleeding ear. Maybe you ain't just a pretty face after all. I'm a widow who's buried everyone she ever loved. Clara's voice was ice. You think I'm afraid of 3 hired guns on horseback? The men exchanged glances. We'll be seeing you again, the leader said finally. Mrs. Aldridge doesn't give up easy. Neither do I. They turned and rode away, disappearing into the trees. Clara kept the rifle raised until she couldn't hear hoofbeats anymore. Then her hands started shaking. Nate was beside her in an instant, taking the rifle, steadying her horse. Clara, look at me. She met his eyes, saw wonder there, and fear, and something else she couldn't name. You could have been killed, he said. So could you. That's different. How? He didn't answer, just looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You shot at him, he finally said. I missed on purpose. By half an inch. Clara's laugh was shaky. Thomas taught me to shoot. He always said I had good aim. Nate shook his head slowly. Who are you, Clara Thornton? I don't know anymore. She looked down at her trembling hands. But I think I'm about to find out. Lily had been silent through the entire confrontation. Now she urged her horse forward, her face fierce and proud. I knew it, she said. I knew you were special. Clara pulled the child close with one arm. I'm not special, sweetheart. Just stubborn. That's what Papa says about the best horses. Lily smiled. The stubborn ones are worth keeping. Nate met Clara's eyes over his daughter's head. His expression said everything his voice couldn't. Worth keeping. They rode on. The ranch appeared at sunset on the second day. Clara saw it from the ridge, sprawling land, vast herds, a house that rose like a fortress against the darkening sky. Smoke curled from 3 chimneys. Lights flickered in windows. It was everything her cabin wasn't. Everything she'd told herself she didn't need. "Welcome to Harlan's Ridge," Nate said quietly. Lily was already racing ahead, whooping with joy. "Silas, Silas, we're home." A figure emerged from the main house. Tall, weathered, silver-haired. He caught Lily as she launched herself from the saddle, swinging her in a circle. "Well, look what the storm dragged in." His voice was gruff but warm. "Gave us quite a scare, little miss." "We had an adventure, Silas. And we found Clara. She saved us from wolves, and she shot at bad men, and she's going to stay forever." Clara's face heated. "I didn't exactly—" Silas's sharp eyes found her. Assessed her in a single glance. Her worn clothes, her calloused hands, her rifle still clutched like a lifeline. "So you're the one," he said. "The one—" His weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile. "The one who finally got him to come home." Clara didn't know how to answer Silas. She stood in the fading light, dust-covered and bone-tired, while ranch hands gathered to stare at the stranger their boss had brought home. "I'm nobody," she said finally. "Just someone who happened to be in the right place." Silas studied her with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by humble words. Right place, wrong time, and still pulled a rifle on 3 of Beatrice's hired guns. He glanced at Nate. "Word travels fast out here." Nate dismounted, his face grim. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough." Silas set Lily down gently. "Beatrice has been making noise all over town, talking about how you disappeared with the child. How nobody knows where you went. How maybe—" He stopped. "Say it. How maybe you did something to her." Silas's jaw tightened. "She's got half the church ladies convinced you've lost your mind with grief. That Lily isn't safe with you." Clara watched Nate's face go white, his hands clenched at his sides. "That's a lie," she said sharply. "I watched this man hunt in a blizzard to feed his daughter. I watched him stay awake all night to make sure she was safe. He's the best father I've ever seen." Silas's eyebrows rose. "You willing to say that in front of Judge Morrison?" "I'll say it in front of God himself if that's what it takes." Something flickered in the old foreman's face. Surprise, respect. "Well then." He nodded slowly. "Reckon we got ourselves a fight." The ranch house swallowed Clara whole. She'd never seen anything like it. High ceilings, polished wood. A staircase that curved up to the second floor like something from a fairy tale. She felt small, dirty, wrong. "This way, ma'am." A woman appeared at her elbow, round-faced, kind-eyed, wearing an apron dusted with flour. "Mr. Harlan asked me to show you to your room." "I don't need—" "You need rest." The woman's voice was firm but gentle. "I'm Martha, cook and housekeeper. Been with the family 15 years." Clara followed her up the stairs, too exhausted to argue. The room Martha led her to was larger than her entire cabin. A real bed with a carved headboard. A washstand with a porcelain basin. Curtains on the windows. "I had the boys bring up hot water," Martha said. "You'll find clean clothes in the wardrobe. Mrs. Harlan's things." She paused. "Mr. Nate said you might be about her size." Clara's throat tightened. "I can't wear a dead woman's clothes." "They're just clothes now." Martha's voice was soft. She'd want them used. Margaret was practical that way. Alone. Clara stood in the middle of the room and tried to remember how to breathe. What was she doing here? This wasn't her world. These weren't her people. She was a widow from a one-room cabin, not someone who belonged in a house with staircases and servants. She should leave, slip away in the night before she embarrassed herself further. A knock at the door. "Clara." Lily's voice small and hopeful. "Can I come in?" Clara opened the door. The child stood there in a fresh nightgown, her dark hair damp and combed. "I wanted to say good night." Lily shifted from foot to foot. And I wanted to make sure you were still here." "I'm here." "Promise you won't leave." Lily's eyes were huge. "Promise you'll stay." Clara knelt down, taking the child's hands. They were so small, so trusting. "I don't know how long I can stay, sweetheart." "Forever." Lily's grip tightened. "Stay forever." The word lodged in Clara's chest like a splinter. "I'll stay as long as I can," she said carefully. "But forever's a long time." "That's what Mama said." Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "She said she'd stay forever. Then she didn't." Clara pulled the child into her arms and held on tight. "I know," she murmured. "I know, baby. I know." She stayed until Lily fell asleep in her own bed. Stayed until the child's breathing slowed and steadied. Stayed until her own legs ached from kneeling on the hard floor. When she finally crept back to her room, she found Nate waiting in the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being kind to her. She makes it easy. She's terrified of losing people." Nate leaned against the wall, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "After Margaret, she had nightmares for months, screaming, clawing at the air. I didn't know how to help her." "You were there. That was enough." "Was it?" His laugh was bitter. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm making everything worse. If she'd be better off with—" "Don't." Clara's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Nate stared at her. "That child loves you more than anything in this world," Clara continued fiercely. "She talks about you like you hung the moon. Whatever mistakes you think you've made, and we all make them, you are her father, her safe place, her home." She stepped closer, jabbing a finger at his chest. "And if you think for 1 second that giving her up to some scheming woman who only wants your money would be better for her, then you're not the man I thought you were." Nate caught her hand. His grip was warm, gentle, nothing like the rage in her words deserved. "What man do you think I am, Clara?" The question stopped her cold. She stood there, hand in his heart, hammering, unable to speak. "Because I'm starting to wonder," Nate continued softly, "if you see someone I've forgotten how to be." Clara pulled away. Her cheeks burned. "Get some sleep," she said roughly. "We've got a fight coming." She closed the door between them before he could respond. Morning brought trouble. Clara woke to shouting in the yard below. She dressed quickly in one of Margaret's plain work dresses. It fit well enough, though the fabric was finer than anything she'd ever worn, and hurried downstairs. Nate stood on the porch, facing a man in a dark suit. The man held papers in one hand and a leather case in the other. "Mr. Harlan, please be reasonable." The man's voice was oily smooth. "Mrs. Aldridge simply wants what's best for the child. And what's best for my child is staying with her father. The court may see things differently, given the circumstances of your disappearance. I got caught in a blizzard, it happens. With no word to anyone. No message. 3 days. Mr. Harlan, 3 days where no one knew if you or your daughter were alive or dead." The man shook his head sadly. A responsible parent would have. A responsible parent was protecting his daughter from freezing to death. Clara pushed through the door to stand beside Nate. The suited man's eyes flickered to her, then widened slightly. "And who might this be?" "None of your business." "Actually, it very much is my business." The man smiled, thin, cold. "Mrs. Aldridge's petition mentions concerns about, shall we say, inappropriate influences in young Lily's life." Clara's blood ran cold. "Excuse me." "A mysterious woman, unmarried, living in the wilderness, taking in a wealthy widower and his daughter for several days alone without a chaperone." The man's smile widened. "You can imagine how that might look to a judge." Nate stepped forward, his voice dangerous. "Choose your next words very carefully." "I'm simply stating facts, Mr. Harlan. Facts that will be presented in court if this matter isn't resolved privately." "What do you want?" The man opened his leather case and produced a document. Mrs. Aldridge is prepared to offer a solution that benefits everyone. She proposes a marriage of convenience. She becomes Lily's stepmother, providing the maternal presence the court believes the child needs. In return, you retain control of your assets and get off my land. Mr. Harlan, now. The man hesitated, looked at Clara, back at Nate. You have until Friday, he said finally. After that, Mrs. Aldridge will proceed with formal custody proceedings. He tucked the papers back into his case. I'd think very carefully about what you're willing to lose. He tipped his hat and walked to his horse. Clara watched him ride away, her hands shaking with rage. She's not going to stop, she said. No. Nate's voice was hollow. She's not. Then we give her a reason to. Nate turned. What do you mean? Clara took a breath. The idea forming in her head was insane, reckless, possibly the worst decision she'd ever make. But she looked at the door behind her, thinking of the little girl who'd asked her to stay forever. She wants you married, Clara said slowly. Wants a mother for Lily, a proper household. I won't marry Beatrice. I know. Clara met his eyes. Marry me instead. The words fell between them like stones. Nate stared at her. His face went through a dozen expressions, shock, confusion, hope, fear, before settling on something she couldn't read. Clara, hear me out. She held up a hand. It wouldn't be real, just legal, on paper, enough to satisfy the court. Prove you have a stable home, a mother figure for Lily. Beatrice loses her leverage. And what do you get out of it? A place to belong. The words came out before she could stop them. Raw, true. I've been alone for 4 years. I told myself I preferred it, but I don't. I'm tired, Nate. Tired of surviving. I want to live. Nate was quiet for a long moment. His eyes searched her face. You deserve better than a marriage of convenience. So do you. Clara's laugh was shaky. But here we are. Lily would expect she'd want it to be real. Maybe. Clara stopped, swallowed. Maybe someday it could be. I'm not saying I don't know what I'm saying. I just know that woman is trying to take your daughter, and I won't let her. Nate stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the gray of his eyes, the lines of exhaustion around them. You'd do that, tie yourself to a man you barely know. Give up your freedom. What freedom? Clara gestured at the empty air. The freedom to die alone in a cabin nobody visits. The freedom to eat my last meal and wonder if I'll see spring. She shook her head. That's not freedom. That's a slow surrender. Something shifted in Nate's face. My wife. His voice cracked. Margaret was the kindest person I ever knew. She saw the good in everyone, even me when I didn't deserve it. Nate. She made me promise something before she died. He took a breath. She made me promise I wouldn't close myself off, that I'd let someone in when the time was right, that Lily deserved a family, not just a father. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. I thought she was being unrealistic, Nate continued. Thought I'd never find someone who I could. He stopped. Then you opened your door in a blizzard and gave us everything you had. I did what anyone would do. No. His hand came up to cup her face, gentle, reverent. You did what you do, what you've always done, given everything and expected nothing. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I don't want a marriage of convenience, Nate said quietly. I want, if we're going to do this, I want it to be real, not just papers, not just appearances. You barely know me. I know enough. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. I know you're stubborn and brave, and you shoot like a soldier. I know you loved your son so much, you built walls around your heart to survive losing him. I know my daughter already loves you, and I... He stopped. You what? Clara whispered. I'm getting there. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Give me time." She covered his hand with hers. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." He leaned his forehead against hers. "God help us both. It's a yes." The news spread through the ranch like wildfire. By noon, every hand knew. By evening, the whole valley was buzzing. Martha immediately began planning the wedding with military precision. Silas grumbled about impulsive decisions, but couldn't hide the gleam in his eye. And Lily was incandescent. "I knew it," she crowed, bouncing on her bed that night while Clara tried to calm her down for sleep. "I knew you were supposed to stay forever." "Your papa and I barely discussed anything yet. Don't get ahead of yourself." "But you're going to marry him. That means you'll be my mama." Clara's heart seized. "Lily, not like my real mama." The child's face was earnest. "I know she's in heaven and she's special and nobody can replace her. But you can be my other mama, the one who's here." The simple faith in those words nearly undid Clara. "I'd like that," she managed. "Very much." Lily threw her arms around Clara's neck. "I love you," she whispered. "I loved you the minute you pulled me out of the snow." Clara held her tight and didn't cry. Wouldn't cry. Even though her whole chest ached with something she'd thought she'd never feel again. "I love you too, sweetheart." The door creaked. Nate stood in the hallway watching them with an expression that made Clara's breath catch. "Time for sleep, little one," he said softly. Lily released Clara and snuggled under the covers. "Will you both tuck me in like a real family?" Clara looked at Nate. He looked back. Some silent agreement passed between them. They tucked Lily in together, one on each side, like they'd been doing it for years. "Tell me a story," Lily demanded sleepily. Clara began to speak, but Nate cut in. "Once upon a time, there was a very brave girl who lived in a cabin in the woods." He told the story of Clara, transformed it into something mythical, magical. A woman who tamed wolves and fought storms and opened her door to strangers in need. By the end, Lily was asleep, a smile on her face. Clara and Nate stood in the hallway, close enough to touch. "That's not who I am," Clara said quietly. "It's exactly who you are." Nate's voice was certain. "You just haven't seen it yet." The wedding was set for Saturday. 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for a marriage that had begun as a strategy and was becoming something else entirely. Clara spent those days learning the ranch, meeting the hands, understanding the operation Nate had built from the ground up. She also spent them avoiding Beatrice Aldridge's increasingly desperate moves. On Wednesday, a letter arrived threatening to expose Clara's past. "What past?" Clara demanded, reading it. "I was married to a farmer for 12 years and then he died." Nate's jaw tightened. "She'll manufacture something if she has to." On Thursday, the sheriff appeared with questions about Clara's whereabouts during the blizzard. Did anyone see her before Nate arrived? Could anyone vouch for her character? "I can vouch for her," Silas said flatly, stepping onto the porch with his shotgun. "Known her 5 days and she's got more integrity than half this county combined." The sheriff left without answers. On Friday, the day before the wedding, Beatrice herself arrived. Clara saw her from the upstairs window. A woman in her mid-40s dressed in silk and velvet descending from an expensive carriage like a queen. She was beautiful in a cold, polished way. Her smile never reached her eyes. Clara walked downstairs to find Nate already in the foyer, his posture rigid. "Mrs. Aldridge," he said flatly, "you weren't invited. I don't need an invitation to save a child from a terrible mistake." Beatrice's voice was honey poured over ice. "Really, Nathaniel, this wilderness woman, this nobody, you're making a fool of yourself." "My choices are my own. Your choices affect that poor little girl." Beatrice's eyes slid to the staircase, where Lily watched from between the railings. "Hello, darling. Remember me? I brought you candy at Christmas." Lily's face hardened. She looked nothing like a 6-year-old in that moment. "I don't like you," she said clearly. "You make Papa sad. Go away." Beatrice's smile froze. Clara stepped forward. "I believe my stepdaughter asked you to leave." "You're—" Beatrice's composure cracked. "She is not your stepdaughter. Not yet. And if I have anything to say about it, not ever." "Then it's a good thing you don't have anything to say about it." The two women faced each other across the foyer. Clara in her borrowed dress, plain and worn. Beatrice in her finery, glittering with jewels. "You don't know what you're getting into," Beatrice hissed. "This world isn't for people like you. You'll fail. You'll embarrass him. And when you do, I'll be there to pick up the pieces." "The only thing you'll be picking up is your pride off the floor." Clara's voice was steady. "I've survived things you can't imagine. I've buried a husband and a child and rebuilt my life from nothing. I am not afraid of you." Something flickered in Beatrice's eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is." Nate stepped beside Clara, his hand finding hers. "Leave my home, Beatrice. Don't come back." Beatrice looked at their joined hands. At Lily glaring from the stairs. At the unified front she couldn't break. "You'll regret this," she said. "Both of you." She swept out the door and climbed into her carriage. The sound of hooves faded into distance. Clara's knees went weak. Nate caught her elbow. "You all right?" "Fine." She took a shaky breath. "Just that woman." "I know." His grip tightened. "But it's done. She can't stop us now." Lily came thundering down the stairs and threw herself at both of them, arms wrapping around their legs. "You were so brave," she said to Clara. "You weren't scared at all." "I was terrified," Clara admitted. "But you didn't show it." Lily looked up with shining eyes. "That's what brave means." The wedding took place at sunset on Saturday. There was no church, no crowd. Just the ranch hands gathered in the yard, Martha crying happy tears, and Silas standing as witness with his hat in his hands. The preacher spoke words about love and commitment. Clara barely heard them. She was too aware of Nate beside her warm, solid reel. Too aware of Lily clutching a bouquet of wildflowers beaming like the sun itself. When it came time for vows, Nate turned to face her. "I don't have poetry," he said quietly. "Never been good with pretty words, but I can promise you this: I will work every day to be worthy of your faith. I will protect you and provide for you, and never make you regret opening your door that night." Clara's eyes burned. "I can't promise to be perfect," she replied. "Can't promise I won't struggle or stumble, or wonder what in God's name I'm doing here. But I can promise to stay. To fight for this family, to love your daughter like my own." She paused, took a breath. "And to learn to love you," she finished softly. "If you'll give me time." Nate's smile was everything. All the time in the world. The preacher pronounced them married. Nate kissed her gentle questioning, full of possibility. The hands cheered. Martha sobbed. Silas blew his nose loudly and pretended it was allergies. And Lily launched herself at Clara with a cry of pure joy. "Mama," she whispered. "My mama." Clara held her tight and finally let the tears fall. That night after the celebration wound down, after Lily was asleep in her bed, Clara and Nate stood on the porch and watched stars wheel overhead. "Second thoughts?" Nate asked. "Hundreds." Clara laughed softly. "But none of them matter." He took her hand. His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I meant what I said, about learning to love you." Clara's voice was quiet. "I'm not there yet. There's still Margaret and Thomas, and so much grief." "I know." Nate's voice was gentle. "We've both got ghosts. But I want to try. Really try. Not just for Lily. For us." He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Then we try," he said. "Together." They stood there in silence. Two wounded people choosing hope over fear. Two strangers who'd become something more in the space of a blizzard and a battle and a desperate, improbable leap of faith. Inside, their daughter slept peacefully. Outside, the night stretched wide and dark and full of possibilities. Clara thought about her cabin, her solitude, her careful, empty survival. She didn't miss any of it. "It's getting cold," Nate said eventually. "We should go in." Clara nodded, but she didn't move. Not yet. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For getting lost in my woods." Nate laughed a real laugh, warm and surprised and alive. "Thank you for opening the door." They went inside together, closing the cold behind them. Ahead, the fire burned steady. The house creaked and settled around them like it was welcoming them home. For the first time in 4 years, Clara believed in tomorrow. 2 weeks of peace. That was all they got before Beatrice struck again. Clara had almost let herself believe it was over. She'd fallen into the rhythm of ranch life, waking before dawn, helping Martha in the kitchen, watching Lily chase chickens through the yard. She'd learned the names of every ranch hand memorized, which horses were gentle and which had tempers, figured out that Silas's gruff exterior hid a heart softer than bread dough. And Nate. Nate was patient, kind. He didn't push for more than she could give. Some nights, they talked by the fire until the embers died. Other nights, they walked the land together, hands brushing but never quite holding. He was courting her. His own wife. The thought made Clara smile in moments she didn't expect. Then Friday came. Clara was in the garden teaching Lily how to check for frost damage on the winter vegetables when the rider appeared. He came fast, dust rising behind him, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. "Mrs. Harlan." He pulled up hard, nearly falling from the saddle. "You gotta come quick. It's Mr. Nate." Clara's blood turned to ice. "What happened?" "Accident down by the south pasture. Horse threw him. He's—" The rider swallowed. "He's hurt bad, ma'am. Real bad." Lily grabbed Clara's hand, her small fingers crushing tight. "Papa?" Clara didn't think, didn't plan. She scooped Lily into her arms and ran for the stable. "Silas!" she shouted. "Silas, get the wagon!" The foreman appeared from the barn, already moving. One look at the rider's face told him everything. "Go," he said to Clara. "I'll bring the doctor." Clara rode faster than she'd ever ridden in her life. Lily clung to her back, silent and shaking. The south pasture was 3 miles out, 3 miles of frozen ground and bare trees, and Clara's heart slamming against her ribs. "Please, God. Please. Not again. I can't bury another one. I can't." She saw the cluster of ranch hands before she saw Nate. They stood in a loose circle, hats off, faces grim. "Move!" Clara leaped from the horse before it stopped. "Let me through." They parted. Nate lay on the ground, his face gray, his leg bent at an angle that made Clara's stomach heave. Blood soaked through his trouser leg. His eyes were closed. "Nate?" She dropped to her knees beside him. "Nate, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. Opened. Those gray eyes found hers, clouded with pain. "Clara." His voice was a rasp. "Lily, where's—" "She's here. She's safe." Clara grabbed his hand. It was cold. Too cold. What happened? Horse spooked. He tried to smile. Failed. Stupid. Should have seen the snake. "Don't talk. Save your strength." Clara. His grip tightened on her fingers. "Listen to me. If I don't—" "Stop it. If I don't make it—" "I said stop." Clara's voice cracked. "You're not dying. You hear me? I didn't survive wolves and blizzards and that viper Beatrice Aldridge just to lose you to a spooked horse." Something flickered in his eyes, almost a laugh. "Bossy," he whispered. Damn right I am. Clara looked at the nearest hand. How long until the doctor? Hour, maybe more. Too long. The blood was still spreading. Clara made a decision. Get me rope, she ordered. Clean cloth, whiskey if you have it, and someone hold his shoulders. The hands scrambled to obey. Clara didn't let herself think about what she was doing. Didn't let herself remember Thomas on his sickbed slipping away despite everything she tried. This was different. This was a wound she could see, a problem she could fix. This time, she would not fail. She worked quickly, ruthlessly. Used her belt as a tourniquet, cleaned the wound with whiskey, while Nate bit down on leather and didn't scream. Set the bone with a crack that echoed in the cold air. By the time the doctor arrived, the bleeding had stopped. Who did this? Dr. Webb, a lean man with spectacles and quick hands, examined Clara's work with widening eyes. This is remarkable. Will he live? Clara's voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it. Thanks to whoever tied that tourniquet, yes. The doctor looked at her with new respect. You saved his life, Mrs. Harlan. Clara's knees finally gave out. She sat in the frozen dirt beside her husband and watched the hands load him carefully onto the wagon. Lily crawled into her lap sobbing, and Clara held her and didn't cry. Couldn't cry. If she started, she might never stop. They brought Nate home as the sun set. Clara didn't leave his side. Not when the doctor set his leg properly and splinted it. Not when Martha brought food she couldn't eat. Not when Silas offered to take over the watch so she could rest. I'm staying, she said. Silas didn't argue. Lily fell asleep in the chair by the window, wrapped in a quilt, her face still streaked with dried tears. Clara sat on the edge of Nate's bed and held his hand and watched his chest rise and fall. He woke near midnight. Clara. His voice was hoarse. You're still here. Where else would I be? He turned his head to look at her. Even pale and pain-lined, his eyes held that warmth she'd come to count on. I thought, he swallowed. I thought I was dying. You weren't. Felt like it. His fingers tightened on hers. All I could think about was you and Lily, how I'd be leaving you. Clara's throat closed. You're not leaving us. I know. He smiled weakly. You wouldn't let me. She almost laughed, almost cried. Ended up doing neither. The doctor said you'll be laid up for weeks, she told him. Maybe months. The bone was bad. Then you'll have to run things. Clara blinked. What? The ranch, the hands, everything. Nate's eyes were serious despite the pain. Silas can help, but he's not family. You are. The men need to see you in charge. I don't know anything about running a ranch. You'll learn. His faith was absolute. You learn to survive alone in the wilderness. You learn to shoot like a soldier. You can learn this. Nate. I trust you. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. More than anyone. Clara stared at him. This man who'd stumbled into her life and turned everything upside down. This man who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. All right, she said quietly. I'll try. That's all I ask. He closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him under. Clara stayed beside him until dawn lightened the windows. Then she went downstairs to face her new life. The hands didn't know what to make of her. Clara saw it in their faces as she walked into the morning meeting. Confusion, skepticism. A few poorly hidden smirks. A woman giving orders. To men who'd worked this land for years. She understood. Didn't like it, but understood. I know what you're thinking, she said, standing at the head of the table where Nate usually stood. I'm new here. I don't know cattle from sheep. I married your boss 2 weeks ago, and now I'm telling you what to do. Nobody spoke. A few shifted uncomfortably. Here's what I do know. Clara's voice hardened. I know how to work. I know how to survive when everything's falling apart. And I know that Mr. Harlan trusts me to keep this place running while he heals. She met their eyes one by one. So we can do this the hard way, where you fight me every step and we all suffer. Or we can do this the smart way, where you teach me what I don't know, and I work harder than anyone to make up for it. Silence. Then Silas stepped forward. You heard the lady, he said gruffly. South pasture needs checking after yesterday's commotion. Miller, take 2 men. Thompson, we're short on feed in the east barn. Get it sorted. The hands moved. Not happily, but they moved. Clara let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Thank you, she murmured to Silas. Don't thank me yet. The old foreman's eyes were sharp. That was the easy part. They'll test you, every day, every decision. You show weakness, they'll eat you alive. Then I won't show weakness. Silas smiled for the first time since she'd met him. No, he said. I don't reckon you will. The testing started immediately. A hand named Dawkins questioned her order to move cattle to the lower fields. Clara stood her ground, explained her reasoning. The weather was shifting. The upper pastures would freeze first, and didn't flinch when he muttered under his breath. The next day, her decision proved right. The upper pastures froze solid overnight. Dawkins stopped muttering. A fence broke in the west section. The hands expected her to send someone else to fix it. Clara rode out herself, worked alongside them in the cold, came home with blisters on her palms and respect in their eyes. A dispute broke out between 2 workers over rotation schedules. Clara listened to both sides, made a decision that satisfied neither completely, but was fair to both. Day by day she learned. Night by night she sat with Nate and told him everything. Her victories, her mistakes, her fears. You're doing better than I did my first month, he said one evening 3 weeks into his recovery. And I grew up here. I'm terrified every minute. Doesn't show. He pulled her closer on the bed where she'd taken to sitting beside him. Clara, you're remarkable. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. There really isn't. She laughed, and he laughed with her, and for a moment, everything felt possible. Then Beatrice made her move. It started with rumors. Clara heard them from Martha, first whispers in town about the rancher's new wife. How she'd bewitched him. How she was running the ranch into the ground. How the men were on the verge of revolt. None of it's true, Martha said anxiously. Everyone here knows that. But everyone in town doesn't. The rumors spread. Grew. Mutated into something uglier. Clara Harlan had been married before that part was true. Her husband died, also true. But now the story said she'd killed him. Poisoned him for his farm. Come to Colorado to find her next victim. Clara heard it from a supply merchant who refused to do business with her. I don't serve murderers, he said, and slammed his door. She rode home in silence, rage and humiliation burning in her chest. Nate was waiting on the porch. He'd started getting around on crutches, though the doctor said it would be weeks before he could ride. One look at her face told him everything. What happened? Clara couldn't speak, couldn't explain. She just shook her head and walked past him into the house. He followed, moving awkwardly on his injured leg. Clara, talk to me. They're saying I killed Thomas. The words came out flat. Dead. Poisoned him. That I came here to... She couldn't finish. Nate's face went white, then red. She'd never seen him truly angry before. The transformation was terrifying. Who's saying this? Everyone. Clara sank into a chair. It's all over town. The merchant wouldn't sell to me. Said he doesn't serve murderers. Which merchant? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Nate's voice was iron. Give me his name. And what you'll hobble over there on one leg and defend my honor. Clara laughed bitterly. This is Beatrice. Has to be. She can't beat us directly, so she's destroying me. Then we fight back. How I can't prove I didn't kill my husband. I can't prove something that didn't happen. Nate lowered himself into the chair across from her. His face was lined with pain from his leg, or from watching her suffer, she couldn't tell. "You have witnesses," he said. "People who knew you in Missouri, who saw Thomas die of fever. That's hundreds of miles away, and even if I could reach them, we reach them." Nate leaned forward. "We write letters. We gather statements. We build a case so solid that Beatrice's lies crumble under their own weight. That could take months. Then it takes months." His hand found hers. "I'm not letting her win, Clara. Not after everything." Clara looked at him. This man who should be resting, healing, letting others fight his battles. Instead, he was ready to go to war for her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you keep fighting for me?" His answer was simple, quiet, devastating. "Because I love you." Clara's breath stopped. "You don't have to say it back." Nate squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking for anything. I need you to know. You're not alone. You never will be again." She stared at him. This man who'd stumbled into her cabin in a blizzard. This man who'd seen her at her worst and lowest and still chose her. Her voice caught. "I don't know if I know." He smiled softly. "It's all right. Take your time." But something had shifted. Something fundamental. Clara looked at him, really looked, and saw not a stranger, not a partner of convenience, but something else entirely. Something that felt terrifying and wonderful and impossibly achingly right. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not gentle, not questioning. A kiss that said everything her words couldn't. Nate made a sound of surprise, then pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair. The kiss deepened. The world narrowed to just the two of them, just this moment, just this impossible, perfect feeling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara's cheeks were wet with tears she hadn't felt falling. "I think," she swallowed, "I think I might love you too." Nate's smile was sunrise after a long winter. "Yeah. Don't make me say it again. Wouldn't dream of it." He kissed her once more, soft and sweet, and Clara felt something she'd thought was dead forever stir back to life. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in 4 years, she believed she might actually be happy. Lily found them still holding hands an hour later. "Does this mean you're really married now?" she asked, climbing into Clara's lap without waiting for an answer. "Not just paper married, but heart married." Clara exchanged a look with Nate. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said. "I think it does." Lily beamed. "Good. Because I told everyone at church you were the best mama in the whole world, and I don't want to be a liar." Clara's heart swelled. "When were you at church?" "Last Sunday. Martha took me." Lily's face darkened. "That mean lady was there, Mrs. Aldridge. She said bad things about you." Clara's jaw tightened. "What kind of things?" "She said you weren't a real lady. That you came from nothing, and you'd go back to nothing." Lily's chin lifted. "So I told her she was wrong. I said you were the bravest, kindest person I ever met. I said my real mama would have loved you." Silence fell. Nate's hand found Clara's shoulder. His grip was tight. "What did Mrs. Aldridge say to that?" Clara asked quietly. "She got real mad." Lily grinned. Her face went all red like a tomato. Then she walked away without saying anything. Something fierce rose in Clara's chest. Pride. Love. A determination so strong it felt like fire. "You're right, you know," she said, hugging Lily close. "Your real mama would have loved me, because she raised you, and you're the most wonderful child in the world." Lily snuggled against her. "You think she's watching from heaven?" Clara thought of Margaret, a woman she'd never met, but somehow felt she knew through the daughter she'd left behind. "I think she's watching," Clara said, "and I think she's proud." The letters went out the next week. Clara wrote to everyone she could remember from Missouri, The doctor who'd treated Thomas, the preacher who'd spoken at his funeral, the neighbors who'd brought food during the fever. And she wrote to someone else. Someone she hadn't thought about in years. Her sister-in-law. Thomas's younger sister, Rachel, who'd moved to Kansas after the funeral. The response came 3 weeks later. Clara was in the barn checking on a sick calf when Silas found her. "Letter for you," he said, "from Kansas." Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Clara, I wept when I read your letter. All these years I thought you blamed me for not coming to help when Thomas and Samuel were sick. I couldn't face you. Couldn't face my own guilt. Now I learn you've been suffering alone, accused of terrible lies. I won't stand for it. I'm coming to Colorado. I'll testify to anyone who'll listen that my brother died of fever, that you nursed him until your own hands bled, that you loved him more than any woman ever loved a man. I'll be there by month's end. Your sister, Rachel." Clara read it twice. 3 times. The words blurred through tears. "Good news?" Silas asked gruffly. "The best." Clara wiped her eyes. "We're going to win." A week later, the confrontation came. Beatrice Aldridge strode into the ranch yard like she owned it. Behind her came the sheriff, the town judge, and a man in a lawyer's suit. Clara met them on the porch. Nate beside her, leaning on his crutch. Lily peering through the window behind them. "Mrs. Harlan." Beatrice's smile was poison. "I'm here to do you a kindness. Confess to your crimes now, and I'll ensure the court shows mercy." "What crimes would those be?" "The murder of your first husband, fraud, deception." Beatrice's eyes glittered. The good people of this town deserve to know what kind of woman has wormed her way into their midst. Clara didn't flinch, didn't waver. "The good people of this town," she said calmly, "are about to learn exactly what kind of woman I am." She turned and nodded. From inside the house, Rachel emerged. Behind her came Dr. Morrison, who'd treated Thomas in his final days, and Pastor Williams, who'd spoken at the funeral, and a dozen other people, neighbors, friends, everyone who'd known Clara and Thomas in Missouri. They'd been arriving for days, staying in the guest rooms and the bunkhouse waiting for this moment. "These people have come a long way," Clara said. "They have statements, testimonies, proof that my husband died of fever, that I loved him faithfully, that I've never harmed anyone in my life." She stepped forward, her voice rising. "And they have something else, something you can't fight or buy or lie your way around." "What's that?" Beatrice's face had gone pale. "The truth." Rachel stepped forward and faced the judge directly. "My name is Rachel Thornton. Thomas Thornton was my brother. I watched him die of typhoid fever, and I watched his wife nearly kill herself trying to save him. Clara is the finest woman I've ever known. Anyone who says otherwise is a liar." The doctor spoke next, then the pastor, then neighbor after neighbor, painting a picture of a devoted wife, a loving mother, a woman of unshakable integrity. When they finished, the silence was deafening. The judge cleared his throat. "Mrs. Aldridge," he said slowly, "it appears your accusations are without merit." Beatrice's face contorted. "They're lying. All of them. She must have paid them." "Enough." The judge's voice sharpened. "I've heard enough. Mrs. Harlan's character has been more than established. This matter is closed." He turned to leave. The sheriff followed. Beatrice stood alone, her perfect composure crumbling. Clara walked toward her, slowly, deliberately. "You tried to take everything from me," she said quietly. "My reputation, my family, my home." Beatrice's chin lifted. "You don't belong here." "Maybe not." Clara leaned closer. "But I'm here anyway, and I'm staying, and there's nothing you can do about it." She turned her back on Beatrice Aldridge and walked to her husband's side. Nate took her hand. "Ready to go inside?" he asked. Clara looked at the house, at the land, at the people who'd traveled hundreds of miles to stand beside her, at Lily pressing her nose against the window, grinning fit to burst. "Yeah," Clara said. "I'm ready." Behind them, Beatrice's carriage rattled away into the distance. Nobody watched it go. That night, the ranch celebrated. Martha cooked enough food for an army. The hands brought out fiddles and guitars. Rachel danced with Silas, who turned out to be surprisingly light on his feet for a man his age. Lily stayed up past midnight, twirling between Clara and Nate like she couldn't decide who to hold on to. "Keep her," Clara said, finally lifting the exhausted child and depositing her in Nate's arms. "I need some air." She walked out onto the porch. The night was cold and clear. Stars scattered across the sky like scattered seeds. Rachel found her there. "Thomas would be happy," she said quietly. "Seeing you like this." Clara's throat tightened. "You think so? I know so." Rachel stood beside her. "He always said you were too strong to waste yourself on grief. Looks like he was right. I wasted 4 years. You survived 4 years." Rachel's voice was firm. "That's not the same thing." Clara looked at her husband's sister, this woman who'd carried her own guilt across the plains to stand beside someone she barely knew. "Thank you," Clara said, "for coming, for all of it." Rachel smiled. "Family fights for family. That's what Thomas always said." "He was right about a lot of things." "He was." Rachel paused. "He'd have liked Nate, you know, and he'd have adored that little girl." Clara's eyes burned. "Yeah, he would have." They stood in silence for a while. Two women bound by loss and love and the stubborn will to keep going. When Clara went back inside, Nate was waiting by the fire. Lily slept in his arms, her head on his shoulder. "Everything all right?" he asked. Clara looked at her husband, at her daughter, at the home she'd never expected to find. "Everything's perfect," she said, and for the first time in her life, she meant it. Spring came early that year. Clara noticed it first in the way the ice melted from the creek, then in the green shoots pushing through frozen ground. The land was waking up after a long, hard winter. So was she. 3 months had passed since Beatrice's defeat. 3 months of healing Nate's leg, Clara's heart, all the broken places they'd carried for too long. Rachel had stayed through the winter, helping with Lily, filling the house with laughter Clara hadn't known she needed. Now she stood on the porch with her bags packed ready for the stagecoach that would take her back to Kansas. "You don't have to go," Clara said for the 10th time. "Yes, I do." Rachel smiled. "You don't need me anymore. You've got your family now." Clara pulled her into a tight embrace. "Your family too. Always." "I know." Rachel's voice was thick. "That's why I can leave." Lily came running from the barn, her dress streaked with dirt and her face bright with tears. "Don't go, Aunt Rachel. Please don't go." Rachel knelt and gathered the child in her arms. "I'll come back, sweetheart. Every summer. That's a promise." "You promise, not just regular promise. Cross my heart." Rachel kissed her forehead. "Besides, someone needs to bring you birthday presents. Can't trust the mail for that." Lily giggled through her tears. "I want a music box, the kind with the dancing lady." "Then that's exactly what you'll get." The stagecoach appeared on the road. Clara helped Rachel load her bags, hugged her one more time, and watched the coach disappear into the distance. When she turned back, Nate stood in the doorway. He'd finally abandoned the crutch last week. His leg still ached in cold weather, probably always would, but he walked with only a slight limp. The doctor called it a miracle. Clara called it stubbornness. "You all right?" he asked. "Yeah." She climbed the porch steps and let him pull her close. "Just saying goodbye to the past. And hello to the future." She kissed him softly. Something like that. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Clara learned the ranch really learned it not just survival mode, but understanding. She knew which hands were reliable and which needed watching. She knew when to push and when to pull back. She knew the land like she knew her own heartbeat. The town came around slowly. At first only a few merchants would deal with her. Then more. Then the church ladies stopped whispering when she walked in. It helped that she didn't try to impress them. Didn't pretend to be something she wasn't. She wore practical dresses and worked alongside the hands and never once apologized for coming from nothing. Some people respected that. Others didn't. Clara stopped caring which was which. Mrs. Harlan. She looked up from the ledger she'd been studying. Silas stood in the office doorway, his hat in his hands. What is it? Visitor for you, in the parlor. Clara frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. She found a woman waiting by the fireplace, young, maybe 25, with tired eyes and a worn traveling dress. She clutched a carpetbag like it contained everything she owned, which Clara realized it probably did. Can I help you? The woman turned. Her face was pale. Her lips chapped, her hands rough with work. Mrs. Harlan? Her voice shook. My name is Sarah Miller. I heard about you. What you did. How you came from nothing and... She stopped, swallowed. I don't know where else to go. Clara studied her, saw the bruise half hidden by her collar, the way she flinched when a door slammed somewhere in the house. Who hurt you? Clara asked quietly. Sarah's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. My husband. I tried to leave once before. He found me, said next time he'd kill me. Clara's blood ran cold. She thought of her own husband, Gentle Thomas, who'd never raised his hand to anyone. Thought of Nate, who treated her like something precious. Not all women were so lucky. Where is he now? Back in Denver. I took the morning coach before he woke. Sarah wiped her eyes frantically. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. I didn't know where else. Hush. Clara stepped forward and took the woman's shaking hands. You came to exactly the right place. Nate found her an hour later, settling Sarah into one of the guest rooms. Who's that? He asked quietly. Someone who needs help. Clara closed the bedroom door. Her husband beats her. She ran. Nate's jaw tightened. He'll come looking. Probably. And when he does, Clara met his eyes. Then we deal with him. Something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. All right, Nate said. We deal with him. Word spread, as word always does. Within a month, 2 more women had appeared at the ranch. Then 3 more. Then a trickle became a stream. They came from all over Denver, Kansas City, small towns with names nobody remembered. Some had children. Some carried scars visible and invisible. All of them had nowhere else to go. Clara took them in. You're running a refuge, Silas observed one evening watching a young mother chase her toddler across the yard. I'm helping people who need it. Same thing. Clara considered this. He was right, she supposed. She'd built something without meaning to a place where broken women could rest and heal before figuring out their next step. Some stayed for days, some for weeks. A few had been here for months. We'll need more space, Clara said. If this keeps up. Already thought of that. Silas handed her a paper. Plans for expanding the bunkhouse. Add a kitchen, separate sleeping quarters. Make it proper. Clara stared at the drawings. When did you have time to do this? Man gets bored just managing cattle. Silas almost smiled. Besides, what you're doing, it's right. Someone ought to have done it years ago. We'll need money. You've got money. Nate appeared behind her, looking over her shoulder at the plans. Use it. Clara turned. It's your money. It's our money, and I can't think of a better way to spend it. She kissed him right there in the yard in front of Silas, and the hands, and anyone else who might be watching. Let them watch. Summer brought trouble of a different kind. Clara was in the new refuge building, half finished now, rising from the ground like a promise when the rider appeared. He came fast, dust rising, and Clara's hand went to the pistol at her hip before she realized what she was doing. "Easy," Nate said, coming to stand beside her. "It's just a messenger." The rider pulled up hard. His face was pale. "Mrs. Harlan, Mr. Harlan," he swallowed. "There's been Judge Morrison sent me. There's a custody petition." Clara's blood went cold. "Beatrice." "No, ma'am. It's—" The rider looked sick. "It's the child's grandmother, Margaret's mother. She's come from Boston. She's claiming Lily should be with family, real family." The words hit like bullets. Clara looked at Nate. His face had gone gray. "When?" he asked hoarsely. "Hearings set for Friday. 3 days." The rider handed over a packet of papers and rode away, leaving devastation in his wake. Clara read the documents with shaking hands. Eleanor Whitmore, Margaret's mother, a wealthy widow from Boston society who'd never once visited her granddaughter. "I didn't even know she was still alive," Nate said numbly. "Margaret never talked about her. Said they'd had a falling out years ago." "What kind of falling out?" "I don't know. She wouldn't say." Nate's hands clenched. Damn it. Damn it all. Clara's mind raced. She's never seen Lily, never written, never sent gifts. Why now? The ranch. Nate's voice was bitter. "It has to be. We had a good year. Word spreads. Someone told her about the money. But she's wealthy herself. Old money runs out." Nate took the papers from her. "If she controls Lily, she controls Lily's inheritance, the ranch, everything." Clara felt sick. Another woman, another threat, another attempt to tear apart the family she'd built from nothing. "What do we do?" she asked. Nate was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady, cold. "We fight." Eleanor Whitmore arrived the day before the hearing. Clara saw her from the parlor window, a tall woman in expensive mourning clothes, descending from a private carriage like visiting royalty. Her face was carved from ice. She looked nothing like Margaret, Clara thought. Nothing like the warm, loving woman Lily described in her stories. "Mrs. Harlan." Eleanor swept into the house without waiting to be invited. "I assume you're the new wife?" "I assume you're the grandmother who never bothered to meet her grandchild." Clara didn't offer a hand. 7 years, no visits, no letters. And now you want custody." Eleanor's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe. She hadn't expected resistance. "I was respecting my daughter's wishes. Margaret didn't want—" She stopped, collected herself. "That's a matter for the court. It's a matter for Lily." Clara stepped closer. "She's happy here, loved, safe. You can't just waltz in and uproot her life because it's suddenly convenient. I'm her grandmother. I'm her mother." The word hung between them, bold, defiant, true. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You're no such thing. You're a stranger who married into money, and now you're trying to steal a child who isn't yours. I'm the woman who tucks her in every night, who teaches her to read, who holds her when she has nightmares about losing people she loves." Clara's voice shook with fury. "Where were you, Mrs. Whitmore? Where were you when Margaret died? Where were you when a 6-year-old girl cried herself to sleep every night for a year?" Eleanor's composure cracked. Just for a second. "I wasn't allowed. Wasn't allowed. You're her grandmother. You could have come anyway. Could have fought for her. Could have done something instead of sitting in your Boston mansion pretending she didn't exist. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Clara stepped back. "You abandoned her, and now you want to take her away from the only home she's ever known. I won't let that happen." Eleanor's face hardened again. The crack sealed over, leaving nothing but cold determination. "We'll see what the court thinks about that." She swept out. Clara stood alone in the parlor, shaking with rage and fear. Lily found her there 10 minutes later. "Mama." The child's voice was small. "Who was that lady?" Clara pulled her close. "Nobody important, sweetheart." She looked angry. She was, but it's not your problem. Clara stroked Lily's hair. "Everything's going to be fine." She hoped she wasn't lying. The night before the hearing, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by Lily's bed, watching the child breathe, memorizing every curve of her face. This girl who'd stumbled into her life in a blizzard. This girl who'd called her mama before Clara even knew she wanted to be one. Footsteps in the hallway. Nate appeared in the doorway. "Thought I'd find you here." Clara didn't look up. "I can't lose her." "You won't." "You don't know that." Her voice broke. "I've lost everyone I ever loved. Thomas. Samuel. What if—" "Hey." Nate crossed the room and knelt beside her. "Look at me." She met his eyes, gray as winter sky, steady as stone. "You are the strongest person I've ever known," he said quietly. "You survived things that would have destroyed anyone else. You built a new life from nothing. You turned this house into a home, and this ranch into a refuge, and that little girl into someone who actually believes in happy endings." He took her hands. "Eleanor Whitmore doesn't stand a chance." Clara wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly her chest ached. What if she does? What if the court? Then we appeal, we fight, we keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. Nate's grip tightened. "But I don't think it'll come to that. Judge Morrison has known me since I was a boy. He's seen Lily grow up. He knows what kind of father I am. And what kind of mother I am. Everyone in this town knows that now." Nate smiled softly. "You've got half the county ready to testify on your behalf, including some folks who weren't exactly your friends before." Clara thought of the merchants who'd refused to serve her, the church ladies who'd whispered behind their hands. How many of them had changed their minds since the refuge opened? Since word spread about the woman who took in the lost and broken without asking anything in return. It might not be enough. It will be. Nate kissed her forehead. "Have faith." Faith. Such a simple word. Such a terrifying thing to feel. But looking at Lily's sleeping face, Clara found she had no choice. The hearing took place in a packed courtroom. Clara sat at the defendant's table, Nate beside her, Lily on her other side. The child held her hand so tightly it hurt. Eleanor Whitmore sat across the aisle, flanked by expensive lawyers. Her face was marble. Judge Morrison took his seat. He was an older man, white-haired and keen-eyed, with the look of someone who'd seen too much of human nature to be fooled by pretense. "This court will come to order." He banged his gavel. "We're here to determine custody of the minor child, Lily Grace Harlan. Mrs. Whitmore, you've filed a petition claiming the child would be better served in your care. Present your case." Eleanor's lawyer stood. He was slick, polished. He painted a picture of a grieving grandmother denied access to her grandchild by a father who'd cut off all contact, of a child raised in isolation, deprived of her cultural heritage, her mother's memory, her rightful place in Boston society. "Mrs. Whitmore is prepared to offer Lily every advantage," the lawyer concluded. "The finest schools, the best society, a life befitting her mother's legacy." Judge Morrison turned to Nate. "Mr. Harlan, your response." Nate stood. He wasn't a lawyer, didn't have the polish or the training, but he had something better: truth. "Your Honor, I loved my wife, loved her more than I can say. When she died, I thought I'd never recover, but I had a daughter who needed me. So I did what any father would do. I kept going." He glanced at Eleanor. "My wife never spoke about her mother, Not once in 7 years of marriage. I didn't even know Mrs. Whitmore was still alive until 3 days ago. Whatever happened between them, Margaret made her choice. She wanted Lily raised here, on this land, with this family. That family now includes a stranger, Eleanor's lawyer interrupted. A woman of no breeding, no education, no connection to the child. That woman, Nate said quietly, is the reason my daughter smiles again. Silence. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Go on. After Margaret died, Lily stopped talking for 3 months, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I tried everything, doctors, medicines, prayers. Nothing worked. Nate's voice caught. Then Clara came, and within a week my daughter was laughing again. Within a month she was calling her mama. He looked at Clara. Love and gratitude and fierce determination blazed in his eyes. Clara Harlan isn't a stranger. She's the woman who saved my family. She's the one Lily runs to when she's scared. She's the one who sits up all night when Lily has nightmares. She's not perfect and she doesn't pretend to be. But she loves my daughter with everything she has. He faced Eleanor directly. Can you say the same, Mrs. Whitmore? Eleanor's face tightened. She didn't answer. Judge Morrison shifted his attention. Mrs. Harlan, the court would like to hear from you directly. Clara stood on shaking legs. I'm not going to pretend I belong in this world, she said. I grew up poor, lost my first husband and child to fever, spent 4 years alone in a cabin trying to survive. I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I can't play piano or speak French, or do any of the things Boston society considers proper. She took a breath. But I know how to love. I know how to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. And I know... Her voice broke. I know what it means to choose someone, not because you have to, but because they've become your whole heart. She looked at Lily, who was watching with huge, worried eyes. Lily didn't come from my body, but she grew in my soul. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee I bandaged, every nightmare I chased away. She is my daughter in every way that matters. Clara turned to face the judge. I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes, but I will never, ever abandon her. And with all respect to Mrs. Whitmore, I can't say the same about a grandmother who disappeared for 7 years and only showed up when there was money involved. Eleanor's lawyer shot to his feet. That's speculation. Sit down. Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. He studied Clara for a long moment. The child? He said finally. I'd like to hear from the child. Lily looked at Clara, then at Nate. Both nodded encouragingly. She stood up small and brave and faced the judge. Lily, Judge Morrison said gently, do you understand what's happening here? Yes, sir. The lady wants to take me away. How do you feel about that? Lily's chin lifted. Clara recognized that look, pure, stubborn determination. I don't want to go. Her voice rang clear through the courtroom. This is my home. Papa is my papa, and Clara is my mama, and I have a room with my things, and a horse named Buttercup, and friends at school, and... She stopped. Her eyes filled with tears. My real mama is in heaven, she said, quieter now. I miss her every day. But she told me before she died, she told me to be brave, to let people love me, to not be scared of new families. Lily looked at Clara. Clara is my new family. She loves me. I know because she shows me every single day. Not with fancy presents or fancy schools, just by being there, by staying. She wiped her eyes. Please don't make me leave. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I've seen a lot of custody cases in my time. Parents fighting over children like property. Money changing hands. Lawyers spinning tales. He paused. This isn't one of those cases. He looked at Eleanor. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't doubt you believe you're doing what's best for your granddaughter. But this child has a home, a family, parents who clearly love her. Uprooting her now for any reason would cause irreparable harm. Eleanor's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, I find it troubling that you made no attempt to contact this family for 7 years. No letters, no visits, no legal petitions until money became a factor. His eyes hardened. I'm not accusing you of anything, ma'am, but I am noting it for the record. He banged his gavel. Petition denied. Lily Grace Harlan will remain in the custody of her father and stepmother. This matter is closed. The courtroom erupted. Clara barely heard any of it. She was too busy holding Lily, who had launched herself across the table and into her arms. Mama, we won. We won. Clara held her tight and finally let the tears fall. They won. They were going home. The ride back to the ranch felt like a dream. Lily chattered the whole way, bouncing between Clara and Nate, still high on relief and triumph. She talked about everything and nothing: school horses, whether they could get a dog, how Judge Morrison had a kind face, what she wanted for dinner. Clara let the words wash over her. Let them fill all the empty spaces that fear had carved. They were almost home when Nate reached over and took her hand. You know, he said quietly, I think I fall in love with you all over again every single day. Clara looked at him. This man who'd stumbled into her cabin in a blizzard, who'd given her a family when she thought she'd never have one again. Just now figuring that out, he laughed, really laughed. The sound made Lily giggle. I knew it from the moment you pointed a rifle at 3 men and didn't blink, he said. I just keep being reminded. Clara squeezed his hand. Good, because I intend to keep reminding you for the next 50 years. Only 50. We'll negotiate the rest. Nate kissed her right there in the wagon, with Lily making disgusted noises and covering her eyes, and Clara felt something she'd never expected to feel again. Complete. The ranch came into view as the sun began to set. Silas stood on the porch watching for them. When the wagon pulled up, his weathered face broke into a grin. Saw the whole town celebrating, he said. Figured that meant good news. We won. Clara climbed down, legs unsteady but heart soaring. We won. Never doubted it for a second. Lily ran past him into the house, already shouting for Martha, wanting to tell everyone everything. Silas looked at Clara with eyes that saw too much. You done good, he said simply. Margaret would be proud. Clara's throat tightened. You think so? I know so. He tipped his hat. Welcome home, Mrs. Harlan. He walked away, leaving Clara standing in the yard as twilight settled over the land. Nate came to stand beside her. What are you thinking? Clara looked at the ranch, the house, the barns, the new refuge building rising in the distance, looked at the life she'd built from the ashes of the old one. I'm thinking about that cabin, she said softly. The one where you found me. I thought I'd die there. Thought that was all I deserved. And now... She turned to face him, took his hands in hers. Now I know different. Now I know that sometimes the worst storms bring the best things. That love can find you even when you're not looking. That family isn't about blood, it's about choice. She kissed him, soft, sweet, full of promise. You chose me, she whispered. Lily chose me. And I choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. Nate pulled her close, held her like she was precious, like she was everything. Then let's go home, he said. Our daughter's waiting. Our daughter. The words settled into Clara's heart and stayed there. They walked into the house together. Inside, the fire burned steady. Martha was already cooking something that smelled like celebration. Lily was perched on the kitchen table, talking a mile a minute to anyone who would listen. Clara stood in the doorway and let it all wash over her. 1 year ago, she'd been alone, broken, ready to surrender. Now, she had everything. Lily spotted her and came running. Mama Martha says we can have cake, real cake with frosting. Clara scooped her up and held her close. Then cake it is. And can we have the whole family eat together, even the hands, like a party? Like a party. Lily wrapped her arms around Clara's neck. I love you, Mama. 4 simple words. 4 words that changed everything. I love you too, sweetheart. Clara's voice was thick. More than anything in the world. She carried Lily into the kitchen where Nate was already stealing frosting and Martha was swatting his hand away. This was her family now. Loud, imperfect, built from broken pieces and wild grace. It was everything. Later that night, after the cake and the laughter and the stories told around the fire, Clara stood on the porch one last time. The stars stretched across the sky like promises. The land rolled away into darkness, quiet and eternal. She thought about the woman she'd been, the widow in the cabin waiting to die. Thought about everything she'd survived, the fever, the loneliness, the storms that should have destroyed her. They hadn't. She'd come through the fire and found something on the other side, something worth living for, something worth fighting for. Home. The door opened behind her. Nate stepped out, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Coming to bed. Clara leaned into him, let his warmth surround her. Just saying goodbye. To what? To the woman I used to be. She smiled softly. She served her purpose, but I don't need her anymore. Nate kissed the top of her head. And who are you now? Clara thought about it, really thought. Clara Harlan, she said finally. Wife, mother, survivor. She paused. Happy. The word felt strange on her tongue. Strange and wonderful and absolutely true. Good. Nate took her hand. That's exactly who you should be. They went inside together, closing the door on the cold night. Behind them, the stars kept their ancient vigil. Ahead, the fire burned warm and bright. And in the morning, they would wake to a world made new, a family forged in storm and love, a home built from second chances, a life that proved beyond all doubt that broken things could be beautiful again. Clara had opened her door to strangers in a blizzard. She'd found her way home.